Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Yakety yak, don't talk back. Now, the reason I'm playing Yakety yak, don't talk back, is because the Antifa punks were probably raised in a feminist household where there was no father, and if there was a father, he was a useless father. No one ever told the punks to take out the trash. No one ever told them to put out the cat and take in the dog. No one ever told them they had to do anything to earn their food. And so now they're breaking windows, attacking innocent people sitting at dinner. What is next? Tell me what is next. The barbarians are amongst us. Who are the true barbarians? Are they the Americans in ICE who uphold the law to protect us from illegal aliens such as those who would come here to rape, kill, and murder? Or are the barbarians those who beat up people who simply go to dinner after doing their jobs? Years ago, I wrote a book entitled Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. I think I was being too kind. It was published in 2005, and it was dedicated, strangely enough, to the American soldier. Isn't that odd? Because they are, in essence, upholding the survival of the nation, as are the police in the streets, as are the Border Patrol agents on the border, as are the people in ICE who arrest the worst of the worst to make sure they don't harm us and to keep our nation secure. I had a call today from someone in the radio industry who I was once very friendly with, who I haven't heard from in many years, and for some reason we're talking again. And he said, Mike, I think he's kind of a liberal guy, very nice man, but a true liberal, I think. I really don't know what his politics are. All I know is we worked together and we had a great working relationship. And he said, I see what's going on now with these idiots in the streets running at people with pipes, breaking windows, rioting, beating people up in the Trump administration, exhibiting their religious hatred and bigotry to stop Amy Coney Barrett, for example. And he said, you were so ahead of your time, Savage. He said, when you wrote Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, I thought it was kind of funny, but I didn't understand it. He said, you were so right. So I dug up an old copy of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, and here is the first line of that book. The conservative movement is dead. I take no pleasure in making that observation. Let's face facts, I wrote. Most of the red state politicians fail to comprehend that the American people are behind them and that the people want them to push through Congress a real conservative agenda. I wish that these empty suits and skirts would provide the leadership necessary to defend America from those who would do her harm instead of taking the side of the enemy. Can you think of one speech wherein the Republican leadership has expressed the desire to protect our borders, our language, and our culture? Without those three fundamental pillars of society, no nation can survive. Except for a few minor utterances about cultural issues, with little or no follow-up, there has been scant support for these conservative principles or values. On my radio show over the last decade, people have repeatedly called expressing their fears that our national sovereignty is diminishing and that this country will be sold out to an international new world order. They fear that American citizens will no longer have the protections of our U.S. Constitution, that it will be replaced by a Constitution forged by the United Nations. No longer will we have the Bill of Rights to protect us. It will be a new watered-down Bill of Wrongs from the new ruling bureaucrats. The concern that American law will be subjected to international law is not an empty fear. Case in point. And then I go into the Mexican government meddling with an Arizona state law with Proposition 200. And I ask, who gave Mexico the right to dictate American policy? And I wrote, frankly, Mexico doesn't have a chihuahua in this fight. Last time I checked, Arizona was not a Mexican territory, nor can Mexico require us to put illegal Mexican aliens on the dole. That hasn't stopped the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund, a bona fide enemy within, from lecturing us, saying that Proposition 200 is an illegal, impermissible, unconstitutional state attempt to regulate immigration policy, which is a fundamental function and responsibility of our federal government. They wrote Proposition 200 is mean-spirited and un-American. That was written by the group called the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Education Fund back in 2002. I then wrote that our federal officials seem to be allies of those international forces who would override our democracy. And I go on, and I don't have to quote myself. You can read the book yourself if you have it in your library. But I'm going to do a few things today that are, I don't know, here and there. It's kind of it feels like Friday to me today. I'm going to make it almost an open mic to mic day because tomorrow is July 4th, and those of us who love America will be at parades, maybe putting flags on graves, but in other ways celebrating this beautiful, great nation of ours, bringing ourselves to the optics of our past, as opposed to the illusions of the present being proffered by the news media and the vermin on the left, who are a very, very small minority. The barbarians are a small minority. Do not be afraid of them. They are the barbarians. They pose as the saviors of our country. All these college students who are out for the summer, who put on black masks and pick up pipes and throw things at those who march with the flags. Now, I got to ask you something. Have you thought through what would happen to this nation if ICE were eliminated? Have you thought about what this nation would become if the immigration department was eliminated, as Charles Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and all the other know-nothings are now screeching because of the hysterical girls who are off for summer vacation? Think about it. There's another story we're going to talk about today for sure. The Trump administration is finally undoing the Obama college standards. They were not really college standards. They were unstandards. Obama introduced affirmative action. In other words, he said that race should be considered in college admissions, which is a clear violation of the Bill of Rights. A clear violation of the rights of all people. And being hit with it most today are the Asian American students. You don't know that. Trump to withdraw Obama-era guidelines on considering race in college admissions. So this Manchurian candidate, Barry Obama, who was a true Manchurian candidate, Barry Obama has maybe advertently or inadvertently targeted a minority group, and that was the Asian American community who's fighting back. Isn't it ironic that it's a minority community fighting affirmative action? Isn't it ironic that those who raise their children to go to school, to do homework, to get straight A's, isn't it ironic that they're being dismissed from the great universities or the ex-great universities of America? Well, that's the group that's fighting back right now. And we're going to talk about that again, which is affirmative action. We're going to talk about what would happen if ICE were eliminated. But on a lighter note, I want to go back to yesterday because there's a story that continues to disturb me. And that is of the Hollywood agent from the William Morris Agency, I hope it's still on my website, who was a very famous member of the bondage community, so they call it. And apparently he enjoyed wrapping people in saran wrap and duct tape and putting them in a near-death state and then having sex with them to show you how sick and demented people are. Yes, they're sick. Yes, they're demented. Yes, they belong in mental hospitals. No, they don't belong running the image-making of the world. No, they don't. It's why we're hated in the Muslim world. Let me tell you something right now, something I've said for years. You are told that the Muslim world hates America because of our political philosophies. They hate America as much for our social insanities. Wrapping people in saran wrap and having sex with them, and then going to work for a major agency that produces the images that the world sees. But the man dies during this so-called consensual act, and there have been no arrests. Now, if a husband and wife engage in a similar act of insanity, and one of them were to die, tell me if the other mate would not be in prison right now or facing murder charges, at least accessory to murder. Then why is it that this big Hollywood agent has not even been charged with an accessory charge? Now you know how the law works in America. Now you know how Hollywood works in America. Now you know why Every movie you see is filled with anti-family, anti-male, anti-family, anti-male, anti-church, anti-children, anti-American messaging. So I thought about this last night at dinner, and I thought about something else related to it. And that was, there's a man in prison named Phil Spector. Phil Spector was in prison for shooting a girlfriend by accident. Remember Phil Spector? Now, if Phil Spector were facing a judge in Hollywood today, I suppose he could use the excuse that he was a member of the William Tell community. After all, the plastic rap guy was an esteemed member of the, what do they call it, plastic rap community. Oh, no, the BDSM community, right. There's a community for everything, apparently. I'm not in a community of any kind that I know of. You're probably not in a community. But it seems every deviant in America is a member of some kind of community. So Phil Spector is sitting in jail today for accidentally shooting a girlfriend, while the Saran Wrap man is not even being charged with a crime as accessory for murder. But Phil Spector could have used the William Tell excuse. He could have claimed that they were members of the William Tell community, and they were just role-playing. And they may not know who William Tell is, but he's the Swiss legend who was famous for his marksmanship as an archer, and he would allegedly shoot an apple perched on a person's head. Phil Spector could have said he was innocently reenacting William Tell's feat, but accidentally missed and shot his girlfriend instead. I bring this up again because of the story I told you about yesterday about the UCLA professor who died from so-called mummification bondage at Hollywood executive Chasey's home. The professor, could you imagine that, was found wrapped head to toe in plastic tape and gaffer's tape. Who knew that he wouldn't be able to breathe? How would you ever figure that out? I don't know how you could not think that through. The material is somewhat porous, isn't it? Isn't gaffing tape porous? Isn't saran wrap porous? No, it isn't. Well, he could have used the William Tell excuse and said it was an innocent accident. After all, they had done this kind of thing before. So the plastic wrap bondage community walks away scot-free. The killer cop community now is walking away scot-free. They have a new name called Black Lives Matter, but it may as well be called the killer cop community. The beat-up a Republican community is the new name for, let us say, what shall we say, Antifa. Did you see one of them get knocked out? Someone sent that to me this morning. One of them wrapped in black, not in plastic wrap. Seems a lot of these college boys and college girls wrap themselves in black and pick up pipes to express their tolerance these days. Well, they picked on the wrong right-winger in Portland. And this wrong right-winger, who's the right-winger as far as I'm concerned, named Rufio Panman, was attacked by one of these cowards in a black mask with a pipe. And he hit him with one punch. He decked an Antifa thug who was hitting with a metal baton and knocked out this piece of garbage. And he will not be charged for the protection of himself. If you'd like to watch the Antifa thug get knocked out and see what's coming in America in the very near future, you can do it on my Twitter feed or on michaelsavage.com. Watch The Patriot. The libs can dish it out, but they can't take it. But there's another element to that video that's very important to watch. It's the screaming college girls who are egging on the Antifa punks from behind them, screaming for them to go and fight. It's the girls who are exciting the boys, largely. They think that they're on a college campus where anything goes and they're going to continue to get away with mayhem and murder. They have not yet run into the brick wall of the right. And let's just pray that things settle down before they do.
Savage.
It is Rock and Roll Tuesday on the Savage Nation, blasting out to America and the world and trying to overturn the socialists amongst us. Make no mistake about it, there's no such thing as a Democrat socialist. And as a dear friend of mine who fought in Vietnam, and he's highly decorated, taught me a long time ago, a socialist is a communist without a gun. Make no mistake about it. There is no such thing as a democratic socialist. They're all murderers. Never, ever, ever let your guard down. Now, who wrote the following, and when was it written? With all the Johnny-come-latelys in the radio business. Who wrote this? various social